Good afternoon, Crime Crunchies. I am your host, Courtney C., and I am so happy to be with you here today, this beautiful Wednesday. Actually, no, it's Monday, March 23rd. Thank you so much for joining Crime Crunchies today. Again, I am your host, Courtney C. I am a 27-year veteran of the media, and I'm so happy to be able to bring you Crime Crunchies now. So let's dive in. We're going to be talking Nancy Guthrie today. I haven't talked about her in several days, and we do have some updates that I wanted to share. Please remember to subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. I always have to remind myself to remind you to please do that. So let me share my screen. I'm going to dive right in. And the first thing I want to talk about is there are some articles out right now. We're looking at the New York Post right now that FBI agents who are investigating Nancy Guthrie's disappearance are reportedly looking into a vacant property in her Arizona neighborhood, and the search of the missing 84-year-old nears the end of its 7th week. We are day 51. Which is a bummer. And I know I'm personally disappointed. I cannot believe that they have not figured this out yet. I think that the Walmart Wrangler, AKA porch guy, they've gotten very lucky. And I say they because I am of the mind that there's definitely more than one. But let's go back to this article. Guthrie, who was the mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, disappeared from her home in the Catalina foothills in the early hours of February 1st, in what is now believed to have been a targeted abduction, which is helpful because the first month of this, I spent going back and forth between, was this a robbery gone wrong? Was this a ransom situation? What's the deal? But now they're definitely thinking targeted abduction. And I am going to talk about some of the thoughts that people are sharing about who they think could be behind this. I personally do not think that they have a suspect. And the reason why I don't think they have a suspect is because they still have billboards up in Southern California, the Tucson area, Houston. And I'm definitely going to talk about those billboards because I don't think the billboard creative that they're using right now is going to help them at all. Talk about that in just a moment. All right, video footage captured by a security camera mounted in the doorway of her $1 million home showed a masked armed intruder approaching the dwelling shortly before she is thought to have been kidnapped. However, authorities have yet to identify the person. For weeks, investigators have been canvassing her Arizona neighborhood, speaking to neighbors, examining security footage from local dwellings, and interviewing anyone who might have had contact with her before she disappeared. Now, News Nation correspondent Brian Enton, who we all love, who has been on the ground outside of Tucson for weeks, reports that local FBI agents may have turned their attention to another target, a property in Nancy's neighborhood that was vacated by its residents before her disappearance. And the thought behind this is that, the camera in the front, even though the Walmart Wrangler took the camera down in the front porch, and we don't know all the video footage that law enforcement has, they could be holding back, but we at least don't see a vehicle pulling up. And we know that these guys came in a vehicle, left in a vehicle, and we do have Ring doorbell camera footage of a vehicle, that white Kia Soul, leaving around the approximate time that a car who would be using that road to exit the area. So it's possible that somebody's captured a car on their Ring camera, but if there is for sure, we don't know who it is. And I honestly believe that if the FBI did have a car, that they would have already narrowed this down even further. I do think that there is more than one person. Again, I do believe Walmart Wrangler, AKA porch guy, had a walkie-talkie and was calling a car around to pick him up. But knowing that there is an empty home in the back of Nancy Guthrie, it makes sense because, one of the theories that I've come up with, and I mean, it's speculation, and of course other people have come up with similar, but what I felt is that somebody could have parked behind Nancy's house, especially if there was an empty residence. They could have been using that residence as a staging area to wait until it got dark and then approach the home and go in the back door. And looking at Porch Guy, aka Walmart Wrangler, we're all assuming that Walmart Wrangler's backpack is full and that he's just now appearing in the front and getting egress into the home from the front at that video where he's got the foliage and he's messing with the camera. But what I think is, if they came in the back door, this could be them leaving. Because think about it. If they're going in and they are wanting to abduct Nancy, we don't know what happened. Obviously, her blood is there out the front door. We don't know what happened in the house. We don't know what evidence is in the house. They haven't shared any of that. They were in the house, we believe, for at least 42 minutes. They could have been in the house longer than that. Okay, especially if they came from that empty house, got in the back door. They could have been in there for hours while she's sleeping. She wears hearing aids. And if she was sleeping, they could have been stuffing that bag full of loot. And then the last step could have been dealing with her in order to abduct her. Okay, something goes wrong. She gets injured, and she could be unconscious. She could be resisting. She could be fighting. She's bleeding. She could be going in and out of consciousness. She could have been unalived at that point. We don't know. And with her being 150 pounds, if it's just if she's not conscious, it's very, very heavy. They could have already been in, gone through the back door, done what they were going to do, and then decide, let's pull the car up front. And the closest way to get her to the car in that circular driveway would be to take her out the front door. So I feel like, with Porch Guy being so relaxed, going to the front door and messing with the foliage and the camera, that could be him getting ready to leave. And his backpack is full of stuff that they've stolen. So that's my theory, is that they're leaving and they're going to take her out the front door because that's the closest way to get to the car. It's a walkie-talkie in his pocket. I know that people have talked about like a Wi-Fi jammer, which is possible, but I think it's a walkie-talkie. They don't have cell phones, supposedly. So I think that this is a guy who could be talking to somebody else, a second person inside the house, and potentially a third person bringing the getaway car around. And that backpack, he came in with an empty one, stuffed it with loot, is taking her out to the car, which could have been part of the plan. And that's the quickest, shortest way to get her out of the house with two people, is through the front door. So I think that's them leaving. All right. That's just my speculation. But the house being empty behind is definitely something that could be a staging area. So let's go back to this article. So some of the things, and this is Brian Enton being quoted in this article, some of the things that they're talking about is there's one neighbor that moved out before Nancy disappeared, and they're asking more questions about that situation. Enton revealed on a recent episode of his YouTube show, Brian Enton Investigates. Not to say that has anything to do with what happened, but that is something the FBI agents are asking about. While Enton did not share any other details about why the property may have lured interest from the authority, retired Pima County SWAT Commander Bob Kriegier, I'm probably messing that up, Kriegier, shed some light on how the dwelling might have played a role in Nancy's capture in a new interview with Parade. So let's see what he has to say. Kriegier explained that oftentimes in cases like this, abductors will look for a vacant property or structure near the victim and use it as kind of a hideout from which they can keep tabs on the person they are following. And that would make sense because we know that January 11th is most likely a recon date, and potentially they're looking at January 24th. These people probably studied her for a while. And so having this empty house nearby would really aid them in, having a place to hide out where they're not seen, lurking in bushes. They can watch and see when lights are going out, her regular routine, etc., etc. The former official said that authorities are likely examining any empty homes near Nancy's dwelling for this reason, investigating whether those responsible for her disappearance used any local property as a staging area before carrying out the crime. It continues, they could look at these kinds of homes as possible home bases or staging locations for the suspects. It would provide them a cover story to be at those locations at different times, Krieger noted, adding that these properties would enable a kidnapper to remain under the radar while watching the activity in the neighborhood. A location like a vacant home out of the prying eye of the neighborhood could also be a location to set up surveillance equipment if anyone chose to do so. It could be easily stashed in a structure or on the property without anyone knowing, he went on. Then here's some pictures. As for why such a property might only have come under investigation, Krieger noted that the authorities may well have received a tip from someone who has only just remembered something unusual about the dwelling or a person they may have seen there, adding that investigators are likely pursuing any and all avenues available to them as the search goes on. His insight into the case comes amid mounting criticism of Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos, whose handling of Nancy's case has faced increasing scrutiny in recent days. And I'm not even going to go into that. And I swear I'm always going to not go into that, but they're definitely looking to do some sort of a recall runoff. And this guy is, I don't know, he's just a joke. So this is the New York Post article that I just went through talking about the FBI looking into an empty home near Nancy Guthrie. And this was written by Charlie Langston. Want to make sure to give him credit. Parade has some updates, but I also want to share that the family has issued another statement on Instagram. So I wanted to definitely look at this because, again, we're doubling down on a few dates. Okay. Statement from the Guthrie family. We are deeply grateful for the outpouring from neighbors, friends, and the people of Tucson. We are all family now. We continue to believe it is Tucsonans and the greater Southern Arizona community that hold the key to finding resolution in this case. Someone knows something. It's possible a member of this community has information that they do not even realize is significant. We hope people search their memories, especially around the key timelines of January 31st and the early morning hours of February 1st, as well as the late evening of January 11th. We desperately ask this community for renewed attention to our mom's case. Please consult camera footage, journal notes, text messages, observations, or conversations that in retrospect may hold significance. No detail is too small. It may be the key. We miss our mom with every breath, and we cannot be in peace until she is home. We cannot grieve. We can only ache and wonder. Our focus is solely on finding her and bringing her home. We want to celebrate her beautiful and courageous life, but we cannot do that until she's brought to a final place of rest. Thank you for continuing to pray without ceasing. The Guthrie family, Cameron and Christine, Annie and Tommaso, Savannah and Michael. And as I talked about in a podcast last week, I actually have a secret source that works alongside Cameron, and he's very private. I've been asked not to share what it is he does, but I do have a source who literally works with Cameron. He is back to work. He is doing, what he can to move forward. Savannah has not gone back to the Today Show. We don't have a date for her return, but I do think it's healthy for them to have gone back to their homes. I feel bad that Annie, is in that neighborhood and she's filled with constant reminders of everything that happened. I don't know if people are still walking by her home, but she was, she couldn't even go home for over a month until things finally started dying down. But I can say that Cameron Guthrie is back at work. I have I mean, like, I know the person who works with Cameron, so I'm not making any of this up. It's actually like I know the person. So we're not getting any information on, things that Cameron is saying, but he is back at work and he's moving forward, which is really the important thing. So while I'm in Instagram, I'm going to heart this post like I have been doing. If you're joining us, thank you so much for joining us. Pop in the comments and let me know where you're located at. I would love to see where you live, and I love any questions that you may have. I want to go back to, and this is from Megan Kelly. Megan Kelly, don't know who her source is, but she's speculating that Transnational criminal group could be behind the abduction. And I actually did a PowerPoint on different motives. And let me see if I can pull that up here, because there are groups that are from South America. Let me just move this over here. And I'm a nerd, and I like when I do a lot of these things, I like to do PowerPoints. And I put together a look at 5 different motives at the time of, what it could be, because we were still kind of guessing, even though it's kind of drilled down to a targeted abduction, meaning for some reason they found out about Nancy. They thought she would be a good target, and they went in and did this potentially for ransom, but she probably passed, I'm guessing and speculating, during the transaction, and so they couldn't do proof of life. But of course, we've got kidnapped for ransom, burglary gone wrong, which we don't believe at this point. Here's targeted abduction. And again, the motives behind this is it is organized and targeted, possibly based on a conflict, fixation, obsession, or revenge for Nancy or a family member. Reconnaissance may occur prior. It may not be financially motivated. It could be emotionally motivated, but I do believe this is financially motivated at this time. Another one, murder for hire, which is low potential. And then SATG is a group. And originally, Ashley Banfield mentioned this, but Megan Kelly is doubling down. SATG is a group. It stands for South American Theft Groups, and they come to the US from Chile or Colombia and are highly targeted. They are sophisticated. They can use signal scramblers, burner phones, rental cars, encrypted apps, along with recon prior. They target high-end homes and grab jewels, cash, designer items, and they brag about their stash on social media. It's crazy. These people, they use Facebook and Instagram, and they'll take pictures of themselves with like Louis Vuitton luggage and other loot that they grab. They typically do not hurt owners or kidnap them. They prefer to go into homes that are empty, but they are escalating. And so it's hard to say that a particular group of these, of a theft group could be turning toward violence. Okay. Typically they have not been violent in that their MO is they want to target an empty home. They'll go in and they'll get high dollar items. They could be looking for gold or silver. If they got word that Nancy had gold or silver in her home, they could have been clued in by a home care worker who didn't even realize that they were sharing information with somebody that they shouldn't have. But it's very possible that even though in the past the MO has not been for these groups to be violent and hurt owners, it's hard to say that this couldn't be an outlier, or that specific groups are getting riskier and they're more willing to do what they have to get a payday. So again, nothing is guaranteed, but Ashley Banfield originally came up with this theory, and I included it in my motive presentation, but Megan Kelly is now speculating as well. Recently, Megan Kelly speculated about a transnational criminal group being behind it. And I do think that this makes sense. On the March 19th episode of Megyn Kelly Show, the journalist spoke with security experts James Hamilton and Will Geddes about the possibility. Kelly brought up Hamilton's theory about the abductors being part of a South American breaking and entering crew. She says, you've been saying on this program for a couple weeks now that you've seen video of these South American criminals who are breaking into homes, adding, this is my new number one theory. You've got me. Now that I've seen the video of these guys, I totally get it. As Kelly shared several of the clips, she insisted they look a lot like our perp. They have a hoodie, sweatshirt on. They have black masks. They have gloves. They are pretty much covered head to toe. However, Geddes wasn't convinced. My gut feeling is it isn't a B&E, a breaking and entering. The simple reason being is the value of the contents of the house. And secondly, the actual disappearance of Nancy's body itself, her person, it's vanished. Still, Hamilton argued, if you came in here with a tourist visa, you flew in from another country, and you came in through a port of entry, we're not going to have your DNA. If you haven't been arrested in the US, we're not going to have your fingerprints. He continued, to me, that might point toward this theory of it was a transnational criminal group. And that's why we're not getting any DNA hits, which I completely agree with, that if it's someone from outside the country, we're not going to have it. They might be able to do genetic genealogy, which they were successful in for Marin, who was killed by an illegal alien. And they had a crime happen in LA. So they did get him through like a cousin, and they busted this guy in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But as far as the body, again, I'm with Will. I wrestle on that a lot, but I also know that these guys aren't stupid, and it's very difficult for you as an American to understand how little human life can be valued. And if you're from another part of the world where human life doesn't mean as much. So we've got a bit of a video here. Let me see if I can.
There's a place I'm going with this, and it has to do with your theory, James, about this being potentially a South American, like B&E crew breaking. See, I'm like in the biz now, a B&E breaking and entering crew, because you've been saying on this program for a couple of weeks now that you'd seen video of like these South American criminals who were breaking into homes. So we finally went and pulled what you were talking about. And this is my new number one theory. You've got me. Now that I see the video of these guys, I totally get it. Will, you've got to look at this. We pulled video of what James is talking about. We have a few different episodes. Here's one. This is in, hold on a second. This is video 4, which is San Diego. Okay. For the listening audience, they look a lot like our perp. They have a hoodie sweatshirt on. They have black masks. They have gloves. They are pretty much covered head to toe. They're clearly not wanting to be recognized and potentially not wanting DNA. Now, here's another guy. He's got like it looks like a balaclava that you'd wear skiing over your head. You can only see the guy's eyes. Now, here's another group sneaking onto somebody's back porch. There's 3 or 4 of them in each of these videos, except, yeah, there's like, they're together. Now, here, this guy, look, the backpack, the face covering, and there's another one we're going to show. But
that track.
I'm going to start with you on it, Will, because it's not your theory, but look at this guy. This is in Tennessee. Yeah. He's got the backpack. He's got the reflective thing on the front of the backpack, or a light. I can't tell which. This almost looks like the actual guy who broke into Nancy's. So your thoughts on it, Will?
Okay, so my initial thoughts, and James and we've discussed this at some length, and I think we're going to continue to argue the toss on this one. My gut feeling is it isn't a B&E. The simple reason being is the value of the contents of the house, and secondly, the actual disappearance of Nancy's body itself, her person. It's vanished. And without wishing to sound flippant, in terms of the outfits that these individuals are wearing, it looks like a standard day in London, if I'm absolutely honest with you. We get a lot of people walking around dressed like this. So it's really about the fact that the disappearance of Nancy, which sort of conflicts me to fully buying into the B&E theory.
You're on the FITS program of victimology is where you start. Like, look at the victim, what happened to her, who would have the motive to hurt her. That's how you solve the crime as opposed to
And
this. All right.
why remove her? And why take her away from the property?
Yeah. Go ahead, James.
Well, I was going to ask Susanna, not having a DNA match so far, and they might have one. Again, they're keeping this very close to the vest, what they do have, what they don't have. But if you came in here on a tourist visa, you flew in from another country, and you came in, through a port of entry, we're not going to have your DNA. If you haven't been arrested in the U.S., we're not going to have your fingerprints. So all this DNA, if they're coming up blank, again, to me, that might point toward this theory of, it was a transnational criminal group, and that's why we're not getting any DNA hits. As far as the body, I'm with Will, I wrestle on that a lot, but I also know that, these guys aren't stupid, and it's very difficult for you as an American to understand, how little human life can be valued. And if you're from another part of the world and I've been there, and so is Will, human life doesn't mean as much. And, take her, why? Because there's evidence on her. Just as Susanna pointed out, there's trace DNA evidence all over her body. So they took her. That could be a theory that would explain why they did take the body. But again, it is a theory, but a lot of things seem to be adding up.
Well, here's the other thing that's interesting about the theory. Jennifer Coffindaffer, she's former FBI, and she's a commentator, frequent on News Nation and on X. And she was pointing out, she's a retired FBI special agent, that an FBI spokesperson has said, they said last month, that they're posting billboards in cities throughout Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, and California with pictures of Nancy. Call.
And I'm going to stop because this is a good place for me to talk about this, because these billboards, in my opinion, they're wasting their media spend. If somebody is not watching the TV and doesn't have as many details on this case like you or I have, because we've been paying attention, they look at this billboard, they're not going to go, oh, okay, well, this could be so-and-so who did this. I heard so-and-so did this. They may not even know her name. Okay. The person or the people who did this may not even know her name. In my opinion, this billboard needs to show the picture of the Walmart Wrangler / porch guy. We need to have picture, or even if they can do video or a full picture of his body, the way he's walking. Some people have said he's kind of bow-legged. Get that one where you see his eyes. They need to have that on a billboard so people can identify him. And then maybe have this swap in with it, because in my opinion, this billboard, I don't want to say it's worthless, but this is not going to help find the person who did this. People may not even know her name. And if you're in Houston, okay, Nancy, someone took her. Why is she missing? Did she take off in a car? Does she live in Houston? Does she live in Southern California? This gives no information, and they need to stop spending money on this billboard and change this creative up completely. And that's, again, my opinion. Let me know what you think about that, because again, we're trying to get people to identify Porch Guy, and I don't think this is going to work. I don't know who put this together, but anyway, let's go.
1-800-CALL-FBI. Now, you could just say those are the states around Arizona and their surrounding states, or you could draw conclusions from this. And here is what she asked. While law enforcement doesn't have the DNA from Nancy's house entirely sorted out, she writes, do they have a DNA contributor's origin figured out? Kind of like the paraben thing we were discussing. Is the person of Mexican descent? This is why I ask. Billboards in California, Arizona, and Texas, particularly Houston. These are all states, she writes, with large Mexican populations. Just because the DNA has not identified the exact person, has the sex and ethnicity of any of the profiles in the samples been determined? Culturally, many Hispanic men groom their eyebrows like women. That's just a fact, she writes. She continues, I am Hispanic, so I'm very familiar with this. I bet that DNA has already provided some answers. The FBI did not randomly choose where those billboards should go. There was a reason.
Well, and I just want to make mention also, because I know Jennifer Coffindaffer on her live this morning, she specifically talked about, and she's ex-FBI, she mentioned also that she's wanting to put together a GoFundMe, which I don't think she needs to. She wants to get permission from the FBI and wanted to get some additional funds so that they could get that billboard change. I don't think she needs a GoFundMe. I think she just needs to talk to the FBI and mention that the creative on the billboard needs to be changed to at least rotate with images of Porch Guy. And the reason why I had thought of this like a week or two ago, and again, I have 27 years in the media, and this is what I do. It's advertising, it's billboards, it's banners, it's ads. And so I had already thought that the minute I saw those billboards, it's like, that is not going to help if you're trying to identify this guy. And so Jennifer, she's wanting to get a GoFundMe so that people could help get new billboards bought with pictures. But honestly, I'm hoping that since she's going to be talking to the FBI about it, she doesn't want to do anything that's going to harm their case. So she's going to be reaching out to people she knows. Hopefully they can just start rotating in a couple other creatives. Maybe have the one of the face with the hand with the little tattoo, or have one of just the face, and then they could have a creative with the full body. I mean, they can rotate several creatives on those billboards and not spend any more money other than creating the images. They could rotate 4 different images, but the one that they have up right now is not going to work.
What do you guys make of that?
I think there's every good chance that they may have some sort of profiling there in terms of ethnicity. I think that's altogether possible. My only concern is, and again, that's from principally working in the shadows as opposed to, say, James and guys in the bureau, is that when you have a call 1-800 FBI, the likelihood of someone who may be connected to the individual or individuals responsible for Nancy's disappearance may feel a little suspicious about calling that line in the event that they could be captured or they could be identified through that process, even though there may be assurances that they wouldn't.
But we're trying to figure out whether there's something to glean from the chosen states, right? That Arizona, Texas, Houston, and New Mexico. Did I say California? Yeah. Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, and California. And in particular, a concentration around Houston could be interesting news. I don't know. And like the thing about the eyebrows, James, we all talked about that. He does look like he has especially groomed eyebrows, Nancy's perp. Though we've also been debating whether it just looks like that because the ski mask may be cutting off the top bushier half that most men would have. Most men don't have perfectly groomed eyebrows like this guy appears to, but it could just be they're kind of sliced off by the mask.
Yeah, I remember when I was first with you, I thought it might be a woman, just based on the eyebrows. But I think Jennifer is making a good point there. And the other thing I just wanted to comment on was that I've seen 2 stories now. The one you just showed about the billboards, which is called this 1-800, general FBI number. And then there was an article in the New York Post this morning about FBI agents, re-canvassing the neighborhood, asking about 2 particular days. And what I'm not seeing here is any mention of task force. I'm not seeing any mention of Pima County. So you would believe that the FBI alone is working this case, which we know is not the truth. So what is happening? Is the FBI getting information? Pima County is getting information? And then how are we getting this together as a symbiotic or, a task force type of investigation? To me, it still seems bifurcated. It seems like the FBI is over here doing something and Pima County is over here doing something. And I don't like to see that at all. I would have loved to have, seen that, hey, the task force was here, the Nancy Guthrie task force made up of Pima County, FBI, even Arizona State Police, but I'm not seeing any of that. So, I think it's interesting.
Well, what do you make?
I think it'd be nice since we've got this task force. I mean, they're the ones who know what the information is. I think it'd be great for them to issue a statement and get Chris Nanos off everybody's TVs. I'm so sick of seeing him being interviewed. He doesn't know what's going on. He does not know what's going on. I really think that he just loves having his face everywhere. He's very busy going to the gym, getting that, old man rock hard body and driving around in his Corvette because obviously he thinks he's a hot stud and he's dumb. So Chris Nanos needs to get off the TV and put the task force, have them issue one statement so that everybody gets the same story, because Chris Nanos says something to interviewer A and then says something completely different to interviewer B, and he screws it up and has to backpedal, blah, blah, blah. So let's go back to this.
The fact that the sheriff was out there,
If
Will,
you agree
a
with
couple
me,
days
let
ago
me know,
saying he
because
thinks he knows the motive in the case and that he's
yeah.
had a strong suspicion about it from the beginning, and there's absolutely nothing that steered him off of that suspicion. What? What is it? Like, why wouldn't you be sharing that?
To be honest, the sheriff is beyond comprehension in my book right now, Megan. I mean, I anything that comes out of his mouth is drivel as far as I'm concerned, and there is no substance or credibility. So it's just white noise running in the background. But to go back to your original question, which was about these billboards being put into particular areas, having worked a lot in Latin America and certainly working on missing persons and kidnapping cases, the one thing I do know is in Latin communities, they can be a very close-knit community, as they can be, for example, in Islamic communities in the Middle East. They can be very close-knit. They don't necessarily want to share information with the wider populace. They may know, and they certainly tend to know, a little bit about each other's business. So those locating of those billboards could be very relevant to specific ethnicities and specific communities. But again, there is a suspicion of law enforcement. There's a suspicion of federal agencies. There's a suspicion of the government, which may in itself be counterproductive. Although it's a great gesture, sometimes it can be better to try and disguise these things in a different way, make it slightly less confrontational, to invite people to communicate.
Hey, Megan,
what do you make, Will, of the fact that there's no
sorry,
quick point, that there's no picture of the perpetrator on the billboards? Like,
I was going to switch over to another video, but do you guys want me to continue? Let me know if you want me to continue with this video. I think this is very interesting. I'd like to continue, but put a 1 in the box if you want me to continue on this, or I can switch over. All right, I'm gonna play it for just a little bit longer.
There's a picture of Nancy. I'm like, okay, great, but like, aren't we actually trying to find somebody who might recognize that guy? I realize it's not exactly like a high school graduation photo, but there is a decent image of him from the video released by the FBI, and it's not on the billboards.
Absolutely. I mean, and again, it's who's serving the purpose here. It's a huge, huge sign. Why isn't there a full-length picture showing his physique, or as far as we can deduct his physique from what he was wearing, the face, the eyes, even the weapon that he was wearing, and the holster that he had that weapon contained within? You know, there's a lot of information about the perpetrator. I mean, in the same way as people will issue, or law enforcement agencies will issue, photo fits, you know, and impressionist drawings of suspects. Again, anybody worth their soul, if they want to know what Nancy Guthrie looks like, then absolutely, yes, it could be useful to have that picture if she may have been seen with other parties. But why not have both?
Yeah, because the odds of this perpetrator, if Nancy is still alive, parading her around in public are probably very slim. But this man is going to have to be out and about, and we presume is out and about right now, walking around living his life, and somebody knows him. Somebody knows him, but not everybody even knows that Nancy Guthrie was kidnapped. You know, Jennifer was pointing out, remember there was that pizza delivery guy who showed up to deliver a pizza to one of the independent journalists who was on site, courtesy of, like, I think, a viewer.
That's the thing. People do not know. People don't watch the news. If you see this missing Nancy Guthrie billboard, she could just be in a car driving around. It gives no information.
Who seemed totally unaware. He's walking right into a crime scene. You know, he went up and was like ringing the bell on Nancy's property. He had no idea. You know, most people are not obsessed with the news. A lot of people don't ever watch the news. Those are the happy people in life. And it's very possible that they don't even know Nancy's missing. But if you put a picture, yes, okay, she could be on it. But if you put a picture of this perpetrator big on a billboard, it's tough to pull your eyes away from, even if you haven't heard about the case. James, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think you're exactly right, and I think it's a misstep, you know, from the FBI perspective, because to me, missing person doesn't resonate as much as abducted. So if the words on the billboard were abducted and exclamation point, that would get a lot. You know, I mean,
great point.
Plus, in that other picture, supposedly he has a tattoo here. If they could do kind of a blow up of that tattoo, somebody, even if it's hard to tell, somebody might be able to tell if there's is a tattoo.
Missing person mean, okay, there's a lot of missing people, right? Well, let's say abducted. And then you're right. Let's have a picture. And you just said what all these other experts have been saying since this case started, which was what? Oh, someone knows this guy. And that's why they went up to $1 million. Well, someone knows this guy. Well, guess what? It doesn't look like anybody knows this guy, or they're not talking. And the reason you may not know this guy is he's not from here.
International disputes, inflation, rising national.
All right. So that I thought was a really good segment. I agree. And actually, I think that the videos that Megyn Kelly showed of the other South American theft group people, I felt like that matched perfectly, because it's almost like I don't want to say a uniform, but obviously these guys talk. I mean, they had the reflective tape, they had the backpacks, they had ski masks, they had bite lights, they had different lights in different places, they had gloves, they had the backpacks. I think that it looks like there's some sort of a playbook out there, and these theft group guys are talking, and they share best practices with each other. And there were multiple people in these little groups. So, I mean, I wouldn't say that it couldn't be one of these, and again, they could have gone in for maybe a breaking and entry or a robbery, but it went wrong, even though, the abduction might have happened because if somebody got into a scrap with Miss Nancy and she scratches them, these guys are smart enough, and I don't want to call it sophisticated enough, but they have a playbook, and they know enough about DNA and the things that are available scientifically to catch someone that they may not have wanted to leave her with their DNA, so they had to take the body. Okay, that is definitely still in play, although targeted abduction is still definitely high up there. And then again, South American theft groups, I believe, is high up there. And again, we're speculating. We don't have all the answers. Before I continue, please let me know where you live. Type in the comment box and let me know where you are at. I would love to see where everybody is at. I'm so excited to have you here. Please remember to subscribe and like. I am a new channel, and it really helps my little baby algorithm. All right, let's see what other ones we've got. I already read the new plea, but I think I had a video. I like playing, let's see, News 10. I think we had one from Brian Enton here. All right, looks like we have security expert reveals his theory on the Guthrie disappearance. And again, I'm happy to play these because we don't completely know.
This is James Hamilton. Now, he is with the Hamilton Security Group. And first of all, James, this is our first time welcoming you to Fox 10 Talks. Welcome aboard.
Hey, thanks for having me. How you doing today?
Really doing great. We, of course, have been following on a really daily basis, although it does seem like things have calmed down now a little bit with the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. But I know you, being in the security field, you've been watching as well and have kind of formulated some ideas regarding what might have happened to Nancy.
Well, thanks for having me. And, when you do these big cases, you really have to keep your options open, let the evidence kind of lead you to where it goes. Unfortunately, at least from what you're reading and seeing, the evidence doesn't seem to be taking us to anywhere definitive. Unfortunately, we haven't found her and no one's been arrested, as you know. So you got to keep working the case. And, there's the investigators, I feel for them because they're clearly working a number of what we would call buckets or leads from different types of theories of what's happened here, but obviously it's a terribly sad case.
So could there be an international connection? Let me tell you why I'm asking about this here. We all saw this video the day that the Ring doorbell camera came out. The guy's behavior is odd. The gun, the shape of the gun and the holster is weird. Nothing like I've ever seen before. The backpack can only be purchased at a Walmart, and no one ever was able to positively identify them, unless somebody has stepped forward that we don't know about yet. So it does make you think maybe we should go a little farther afield. What have you been able to kind of piece together?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that, and I'm also trying to not, start to believe my own kind of theory, if you will. But certainly, if you look at, what the FBI calls South American theft groups, and these are individuals and have been around for at least 5 years in the U.S. and they come in on tourist visas from other parts of the world, mostly South America, and they rob, houses, very high end, high net worth type houses, jewelry, and other types of things on a burglary type of a deal. But if you look at pictures of these individuals, it is eerily similar to what you're seeing on Miss Guthrie's, the video you're showing right now. It's eerily similar with the backpack, with the gloves, covering of the face, very, very similar. They also use jammers to disable the Wi-Fi, which we know investigators have been asking, when they do a neighborhood canvass of Miss Guthrie's neighborhood, they are asking specifically about that. We also know that this group uses cell phone burners. So again, a lot of the evidence that usually would point us somewhere. Let me, before I go down that with the cell phone, but if they came in on a tourist visa, we might just get their index fingerprint, but we're not going to have DNA. So all of the evidence we keep talking about in this case, be it crime scene evidence, DNA, fingerprints, the face, who this person is, cell phone activity, all the things we would see in normal cases. Well, if you're coming up empty, which you can only, here we are 50 days later, assume that they're coming up empty. And if they're coming up empty, one of the reasons might be because, these people are not in the system and they could be from another part of the world. And that's, again, a theory. I'm trying to, take my own medicine here or my own advice here and not fall in love with my own theory, but it certainly does fit a lot of the boxes.
So where do investigators go from here? It seems like, the video was the big piece of evidence I think a lot of people were hoping would crack this case wide open. But what's next? How do they approach this with fresh eyes coming at it at different angles?
Yeah, well, they need a lot of resources. And so, again, I don't know what's happening behind the scenes. If the FBI and other local agencies are being brought in, you need that. You need the manpower or the human power for one, but you also need the Bureau for if there is an international nexus or other state nexus, you need the FBI for those resources. So back to your question specifically, they got to go back to again, fresh eyes, look at everything. And there's a number of buckets they're looking at. They're looking at everything with this victim, what was going on with her in her personal life, in her business life, and everything. Then there's somebody looking at the family and the friends. Then there's someone looking at this random theory like we've been discussing, where maybe they're a South American or some people suggested cartel. I call that the random bucket. So they're working that lead. Then you got people working the evidence, DNA, blood, fingerprints, cell phone activity, credit card activity. Then you got another bucket of neighborhood canvases, people talking to neighbors. Maybe there's somebody that hasn't turned in, any CCTV footage that they have because they've been on vacation. They haven't been answering phone calls. Maybe there's something out there, and they got to keep working it and just, old-fashioned police work.
I don't know if you're aware, but we have had, we're obviously in the Phoenix metro area here, but we've had multiple instances of South American gangs pulling off heists, specifically targeting high-end neighborhoods, which for people who weren't familiar with Tucson, the Catalina foothills are about as high-end as it gets in that metro area. But North Scottsdale got hit multiple times. They were able to make some arrests, but I'm gathering from you that there are multiple rings that come into the U.S., even though some people have been taken down already.
Absolutely. You're 100% correct. They are operating what I've read in Tucson. And so it makes sense. Of course, people, you got to be careful here because a lot of people can't shake from their mindset that it had to have something to do with Savannah because she's famous. Well, why couldn't it be random? Why couldn't it just be because the house fits a particular MO? And what do I mean by that specifically? Well, if you read about this South American theft group, they like homes that provide easy ingress and egress, meaning an ability to get to the home. And if you live on a golf course or a walking trail, which Miss Guthrie does, then that's something they like. And I know people don't want to hear it. They're like, no, it had to do with Savannah. And I appreciate that. But it is possible that it had nothing to do with who she was. And it just happened to be the house that they liked because it fit a lot of the needs they wanted from a criminal mindset.
And if it was this theory of the South American ring, this ring has been very successful and in what they do, and they've never taken a kidnapping, a person before. So why would they risk maybe messing up the organization and their strategy of committing these robberies? It seems odd.
Well, certainly. Yeah, it's a great question. And I would just tell you, you probably would not break into someone's house at 2 a.m, right? That's because you're like, I wouldn't do that. And because you wouldn't do that, it's very difficult for you to understand, what would you do with a dead body? What would you do if somebody died, in the midst of a crime that you're committing? It's very difficult to rationalize the irrational. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to say, well, why would they do that if they've never done it before? Because something happened. Something happened when they were in there. Maybe they didn't expect her to be there. Maybe they thought it was going to be an empty house.
I think that really makes sense. Let me go back to, if you guys are just joining, let me see if I can find, I thought it was a really good video with Megyn Kelly. And what I'll do is we just played it, but I kind of wanted to go back and look at the video portion that Megyn played during the segment to show that these guys in these transnational groups, it looks just like a uniform almost. Well, it looks like I'm not getting that. Okay, let me go back here. I think I've got too many things open, guys. Let me make sure, am I frozen? Let me get rid of this. All right, I'll just take that down. I don't want to mess anything up. I think I've got too many windows open. So the last thing I want to talk about is that supposedly Savannah Guthrie is really upset with Ashley Banfield because Ashley Banfield had mentioned like day 3 that she had a source, a law enforcement source, who told her that their prime suspect was the brother-in-law. And now we know that the family's been cleared and that wasn't the case. But on day 3, it absolutely makes sense that the brother-in-law could have been a prime suspect. Just because that's how typically these things go. I mean, why Nancy Guthrie, 84-year-old woman, is not high risk. Okay, sleeping in her home in her bed in the middle of the night, she is not high risk. She's just isn't. And when you've got somebody who is low risk like that, it typically is somebody in the immediate orbit. And so again, the playbook is it could be someone in the family. They were the last ones that saw her, which is strike 1. Strike 2, they were the last ones that dropped her off. Strike 3 is they're the immediate family. And, we know that they had dinner and were playing games, but we really don't know what conversations were happening. And so Megyn Kelly stated that she doesn't think that Savannah Guthrie wants to sue Ashley Banfield, but she's livid that people took that conversation and supposedly just rolled with it. And they have been harassed. The family has been harassed. The other members of the band have been harassed. And, I am sorry to hear that did happen. But I mean, that's just, in this day and age, that's really just the logical step. And I don't think that Ashley Banfield meant any harm by that. And, being in news, Savannah Guthrie has to know in her heart of hearts that that's where people are going to go. So I hope that she understands, because I mean, I even in the beginning of covering this, since I've been covering it since the very beginning, I even was looking at one of the bandmates and was thinking if for sure could be someone in this immediate group, because that's just how it is. And, I immediately stopped doing that as soon as the family got cleared because I want to be responsible. I don't want to stir up more controversy. If they're cleared, they're cleared. We'll find out if that changes. But I do want to be responsible when I'm sharing and regurgitating information. Some people have continued to state these opinions even after the family was cleared. And I know that Ashley did stop sharing that opinion after the family was cleared. It was just weird. I mean, considering Sheriff Nanos had some back and forth comments, their car had been in evidence for far longer than even the people who had been swatted. So it just looked really, really odd. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. Ashley Banfield and Savannah Guthrie were supposedly, friends and have known each other for decades. So I'm hoping that everything kind of clears out. And we have to remember that hurt people hurt people. And, when we're hurt ourselves, anger is one of the easiest emotions to go to. And, I certainly can't blame the Guthries for feeling upset about that because, it's just adding salt to the wound, considering the trauma that they're in. I'm hoping that they are getting counseling. Like I mentioned, Cameron Guthrie, I have a friend who works with him. He is back at work. I'm hoping Savannah goes back to work. I mean, there's nothing worse for your mental space than to just kind of sit and what I say, wallow in the pain. You have to try to find a happy. I believe Nancy would want her children to move on. I believe that her mother, Nancy, would want them to try to find any happiness in their life that they absolutely can at this point. So I want to thank everybody for joining me. I am totally staying on this story. I'm completely connected. We're not going to give up. I'm hoping any day now we have some news and that they get somebody and that we can come on and start looking at what's happening from the results of this. Please remember to subscribe. Please like, comment, let me know where you live. Let me know what you think about the case. I am going to be at CrimeCon. I'm so super excited to be there. Again, I am Courtney C., your host at Crime Crunchies. I'm a 27-year veteran in the media and so happy to have everybody here. I love you. And Nancy, let's see, we have a quick question. What's up, guys? Hey, Francisco. Did anyone call psychics? They usually solve these crimes. I can't imagine that there are not psychics calling in. Let's see. Wilson has a question. A lot of people are still believing that. Yes, I'm not sure exactly what it is that you think that they're believing, but I think we're all believing a lot of, maybe you're talking about the family being involved. And that's fine. There's a part of, like I said, I kind of have left it on the table, but it's kind of in a little corner up on the table. Just because a family has been cleared, but I have mentally kind of just put it up on the table. Let's see, what are you talking about? If psychics solve crimes, we would have every crime solved within a day or two. Yeah. Hey, you know what? That's fair. It's hard to say. Maybe somebody will have an idea and call it in. Never say never is what I say. So again, thank you. Again, everybody. Again, please subscribe, please like, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day. And I will be back very soon with more live content. I am watching the Kelsey Fitzsimmons trial, so I'll be back tonight with a recap of that. But until then, I will catch you on the flip side. Take care.